I always thought my life was stable. Not perfect, because no marriage is perfect, but good enough that I never really worried about it falling apart. My name is Daniel, and I'm 42. I've been married to Laura for 15 years, and we have a solid routine, a good life, and what I believed was mutual love. She's always been the outgoing one, while I'm more reserved and accountant by profession, methodical, structured. She works in marketing, full of energy, always meeting clients and traveling for work. It's something I admired about her. We had our rituals. Sunday brunches, Friday night movies, and evening walks when the weather was nice. Sure, the passion had faded a bit over the years, but I always assumed that was normal. We still laughed together. We still made plans for the future. So I never thought to question the small changes in her behavior. It started subtly. Laura began spending more time on her phone, smiling at messages she never shared. She'd leave the room to take calls, something she never used to do. Her business trips became more frequent, and while they had always been part of her job, they now seemed oddly last minute. Then came the night that planted the first real seed of doubt. She had gone out with work colleagues for a casual drink, something she did from time to time, but when I called her at 10:30 p.m., she didn't pick up. When she got home past midnight, she smelled different, not of alcohol or perfume, but of someone else's cologne. I didn't say anything that night. Instead, I just lay there, staring at the ceiling while she curled up next to me like everything was normal. Maybe it was. Maybe I was overthinking. But over the next few days, more things fell off. A few times, when I picked up the landline, the caller immediately hung up. Laura, who usually shared every detail of her work drama, suddenly became vague about who she was meeting. And then, one evening, she walked in the door and immediately headed to the shower, something she only ever did after the gym, but she hadn't gone to the gym. I wanted to trust her. I really did. So I convinced myself that I was just being paranoid. But then I saw it, the small, seemingly insignificant detail that I couldn't ignore. Laura had always been careless with her belongings, leaving her purse lying around, her laptop open. But one night, as I reached for her phone to check the time, I saw that she had changed her passcode. For the first time in 15 years. And that's when I knew something was wrong. The night I discovered Laura had changed her passcode, I told myself it didn't mean anything. Maybe she had updated it for security reasons. Maybe work required her to change it periodically. Maybe I was just grasping at explanations that wouldn't hurt. But deep down, I knew. Over the next few days, the doubt turned into something else, an obsession. I started paying closer attention to everything. The way she'd tense up when a message popped up on her screen. The way she started dressing a little nicer on days when she was just going to the office. The way she'd take her phone with her everywhere, even to the bathroom, something she never used to do. Then came the excuses. One night, we were supposed to have dinner together, just a normal Thursday evening at home. I had even gone out of my way to cook one of her favorites, garlic butter steak with mashed potatoes. It had been a while since we had a proper meal together, just the two of us. But at 6:30, she called me, her voice rushed. "Hey, babe. I'm so sorry, I totally forgot I have to stay late for a client meeting. It's a last-minute thing. Don't wait up, okay?" She hung up before I could respond. I stared at the phone for a moment, then at the 2 plates of food sitting on the table. The meal I had taken the time to prepare now felt pointless. But what bothered me more than anything was how unnatural her excuse sounded. Laura had never forgotten dinner plans before. She was organized to the point of being obsessive about scheduling. That's when I decided I couldn't ignore the signs anymore. That night, I barely slept. I kept going back and forth between my gut feeling and the hope that I was just imagining things. By morning, I had made up my mind. I needed proof. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. The following Saturday, Laura was in the shower, and her phone was charging on the nightstand. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at it. It was locked, of course. The new passcode. For a moment, I considered trying to guess it. Our anniversary? Her birthday? Maybe something random? But then I reminded myself that she wasn't an idiot, she'd make sure it wasn't something I could easily figure out. Just as I was about to put the phone down, it vibrated. A new message. From someone named Ethan. I didn't recognize the name, but the preview of the message was enough to send my heart racing. Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. The phone locked itself again, the message disappearing from view. But I had seen enough. I sat there, my hands trembling, my body frozen. My mind went blank for a second, as if it refused to process what I had just read. Miss you already. Can't stop thinking about last night. There was no way to twist those words into something innocent. I barely noticed the sound of the water turning off in the bathroom. Laura stepped out a few minutes later, wrapped in a towel, humming to herself. I forced myself to act normal. I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not without more. I spent the rest of the weekend in a haze, barely able to look at her without my stomach twisting into knots. She had no idea what I had seen. No idea that the way she smiled at me now felt like a lie. I needed to know who Ethan was. And I needed to know just how deep this went. So, I did something I never thought I'd do. On Monday, when she left for work, I followed her. I had never been the kind of man who snooped through my wife's things or questioned where she was going. But now, I had no choice. She told me she had an early meeting. She left the house at 7:15, dressed in her usual work attire, business casual with a slight touch of effort that hadn't been there before. Her hair was done in loose waves, her makeup just subtle enough to be polished but noticeable. I waited 5 minutes after she pulled out of the driveway, then grabbed my keys and followed. She was supposed to be heading to her office downtown. But after a few turns, I realized she wasn't going in that direction. My pulse pounded as I drove a few cars behind her, trying not to be obvious. She wasn't heading to work. She was heading to a hotel. I felt like my world was caving in as I watched her pull into the parking lot of a Hilton. She parked, then sat in the car for a few minutes, probably texting him. Then, as if she had done this 100 times before, she stepped out of the car, straightened her dress, and walked inside. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. This was real. She was cheating on me. And now, I had the proof. I sat in my car for what felt like an eternity, my mind racing through a million different thoughts. Do I storm in there and catch her in the act? Do I wait until she comes out and confront her? Do I pretend I never saw anything and go back to my miserable ignorance? The rage bubbling inside me wanted me to act now. To make a scene. To let her see the pain she had caused me. But I knew that if I went in there, it would end in disaster. So instead, I did something much colder. I took out my phone, snapped a picture of her car in the hotel parking lot, and then drove away. I spent the rest of the day trying to figure out my next move. I couldn't stay in the house with her anymore, not knowing what I knew. But I also didn't want to leave without a plan. I went back home, grabbed a few things, and booked a hotel for the night. That evening, Laura called me, acting like everything was fine. "Hey, babe. How was your day?" she asked, her voice as sweet as ever. I stared at my phone, gripping it so tightly I thought it might shatter. "Busy," I said flatly. "Yeah. Mine too," she sighed. "Meetings all day. I'm exhausted." Meetings. I forced myself to swallow the bitterness rising in my throat. "I bet," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She didn't notice the way my tone had changed. Or maybe she didn't care. "I'm heading to bed early," she said. "See you at home?" I almost laughed at the absurdity of her words. See you at home. As if she hadn't spent the day in a hotel with another man. Yeah, I lied. See you at home. I hung up, staring at the ceiling of my hotel room, feeling completely and utterly empty. Tomorrow, I would confront her. And whatever happened after that would change everything. I didn't sleep that night. Not a single second. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking into that hotel. I imagined her with him, this Ethan guy, laughing, touching, whispering things she used to say to me. I had replayed every moment of our marriage in my head, searching for the moment she started to slip away. Had it been weeks? Months? A year? I needed to know the full extent of her betrayal, and more importantly, I needed to hear her admit it. So, I went home the next morning, just before she woke up. I needed to be there when she opened her eyes, needed her to see me the moment she woke up so she couldn't avoid me. When I walked into the bedroom, she was still curled under the blankets, her hair sprawled across the pillow. She looked peaceful, like she had no guilt, no shame. It disgusted me. For a second, I just stood there, watching her, wondering how the hell she could betray me and then come home and sleep so soundly. Then I spoke. "Good morning, Laura." Her eyes fluttered open, adjusting to the dim morning light. She blinked a few times, then frowned, as if trying to figure out why I was standing there, fully dressed, staring at her like a man who had just walked through fire. "Dan," she mumbled, her voice groggy. "You're up early." I ignored the comment. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but I forced myself to keep my voice calm. "Where were you yesterday?" I asked. She stretched, running a hand through her hair. "At work. Same as always." "Why?" "Lies." I could feel my blood pressure rising, but I swallowed the rage, keeping my face blank. I needed her to walk into this trap willingly. "Work?" I repeated. She nodded. "Yeah. Back-to-back meetings. Exhausting day." I took out my phone, opened my camera roll, and tossed it onto the bed in front of her. The picture of her car in the Hilton parking lot was the first thing she saw. For a moment, she didn't react. She just stared at the screen, as if her brain was struggling to process what she was looking at. Then, ever so slowly, she looked up at me. I saw the exact moment panic flickered across her face. "Dan," she started. "Don't." My voice was sharp, slicing through the air like a blade. "Don't you dare lie to me again." She sat up, pulling the sheets around herself. Okay. I can explain." I crossed my arms, waiting. "Go ahead. Explain." She hesitated. I could see her brain working, trying to come up with something that would make this go away. "I met a client there," she finally said. "We needed privacy for a big account we're working on. It's not what you think." I actually laughed. I hadn't expected that reaction, but it came out before I could stop it. "You needed privacy?" I said, shaking my head. "That's the best you've got?" She stiffened. "It's the truth." I grabbed my phone from the bed and scrolled to the next picture, the one I had taken of her walking into the hotel. Alone. With no briefcase. No laptop. Just herself in that stupid red dress she never wore for me anymore. I turned the screen toward her again. "Try again." Laura's face went pale. For the first time, she looked guilty. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay. I messed up. I'm sorry, Dan." I clenched my jaw. "Messed up?" I repeated. "Is that what you call it? Messed up?" She rubbed her face, avoiding my eyes. "I never meant for this to happen. It got out of control." I let out a humorless laugh. "How long?" "Dan. How long?" She swallowed. "A few months." I felt my stomach lurch. "A few months," I repeated, almost to myself. So all those nights I kissed her goodnight, all those mornings I made her coffee, all those times I told her I loved her, she had been sleeping with someone else? I took a step back, running a hand down my face. My fingers were shaking. "Who is he?" Laura hesitated again. And that hesitation told me everything. I didn't even need her to answer. I already knew it was Ethan. "Someone from work?" I asked, voice hollow. She nodded, staring down at her hands. My head started spinning. "And you just, what?" Decided our marriage wasn't worth telling me the truth? I didn't plan this, Dan, she whispered. It just. Stop. I cut her off, my voice sharper than I intended. Don't give me the "it just happened" speech. That's not how this works. You made choices. You chose to lie to me. You chose to sleep with him. You chose to come home and act like nothing was wrong. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. Then why? My voice cracked. Why would you do this to me? She wiped at her face, sniffling. I don't know. Bullshit. She flinched. You don't accidentally fall into a hotel room with another man, Laura. You don't accidentally destroy your husband's trust. So tell me the real reason. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, in the softest voice, she finally said it. I stopped feeling like myself with you. I just stared at her. What? She swallowed hard. I love you, Dan. I do. But somewhere along the way, I started feeling like just a wife. Just, your wife. And I wanted to feel. Desired? I finished for her, my voice laced with bitterness. She nodded, wiping at fresh tears. That's funny, I said, my tone empty. Because I spent 15 years making sure you knew how much I wanted you. I spent 15 years putting you first. She had no response. Because we both knew it was true. She wasn't unhappy. She was just selfish. For the first time in my life, I realized the woman I had married wasn't the person I thought she was. She was someone who would lie to my face, break my trust, and still expect me to understand. I took a deep breath, my hands still trembling. You need to pack a bag, I finally said. Laura's eyes widened. Dan. Pack. A bag. Where am I supposed to go? I shrugged. Maybe Ethan's house. Since you seem so comfortable with him. She let out a broken sob. Please, don't do this. I don't want to lose you. I almost laughed again. You already did, Laura. She had lost me the moment she walked into that hotel. As she packed, I sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Everything felt surreal. 15 years. Gone. But I wasn't going to be the man who begged. I wasn't going to be the man who stayed. I was going to be the man who walked away. Laura laughed. I watched her walk out the front door, her suitcase rolling behind her, her face streaked with tears. She didn't beg me to change my mind again. Maybe because she knew there was no point. Maybe because she knew, deep down, that I was done. The door clicked shut, and for the first time in 15 years, I was alone in our house. No, not our house. My house now. I stood in the silence, staring at the spot where she had just been. The air still smelled like her perfume, that faint vanilla scent I used to love but now made my stomach turn. I half expected her to walk back in, to tell me it was all a mistake, to say she never actually left. But she was gone. I sank onto the couch, my hands clasped together, staring at nothing. The anger that had been burning inside me for the past few days was gone, leaving behind nothing but exhaustion. I had gotten what I wanted. She was out of my house, out of my life. So why did I feel so fucking empty? The first night without her was worse than I expected. I didn't cry. I didn't even get drunk, though I seriously considered it. Instead, I just sat there, going through the motions of an evening that suddenly felt foreign. I made dinner, but I barely touched it. I turned on the TV, but I didn't really watch it. I got into bed, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every conversation, every moment, every lie. For 15 years, I had built a life with a woman who had thrown it all away for a cheap thrill. And now, I had to figure out what the hell to do next. By morning, I had a plan. The first step was divorce. I wasn't the type to drag things out, to play games. Laura had made her choice, and I had made mine. There was no salvaging this, no second chances. So, I called a lawyer. His name was Greg Holloway, a guy I had met through work once. He was known for being ruthless in court, and right now, I needed ruthless. Dan, Greg said, his voice calm. Tell me what happened. I kept it short. No emotions, just facts. My wife had an affair. I want a divorce. I want to keep the house. Greg didn't ask me if I was sure. He didn't ask me if I wanted to talk things through. He just said, good. Let's make this clean and fast. That's exactly what I wanted. The second step was exposing the truth. Not to be petty. Not out of revenge. But because people deserved to know what kind of person Laura really was. I started with Ethan. I didn't know much about him other than his name and the fact that he worked with her. So, I did some digging. It wasn't hard. LinkedIn, social media, company website. Within minutes, I had everything I needed. Ethan Samuels. 36. Recently promoted. Married. Married. I almost laughed. Of course, he was. I stared at his profile picture, a generic corporate headshot of a man with dark hair, a neatly pressed suit, and a fake smile. This was the guy Laura had thrown our marriage away for? But the real prize was his wife. Amanda Samuels. I found her on Facebook, scrolling through picture after picture of a seemingly happy couple. Their anniversary posts. Their vacations. Their wedding. I felt an odd sense of relief. At least I wasn't the only one being lied to. Without hesitating, I sent her a message. Hi Amanda, I know this is going to be hard to hear, but I have proof that your husband has been having an affair with my wife. If you want the details, let me know. I attached the pictures of Laura's car at the hotel. Then I waited. It took 3 minutes for her to reply. Who are you? I'm Daniel Carter. My wife is Laura Carter. Your husband is sleeping with her. The typing bubble appeared and disappeared several times before she finally responded. Prove it. So I did. I sent her everything I had, the screenshots of the texts, the timestamps, the proof that Laura wasn't at work when she said she was. She didn't respond right away. But when she did, it was just 2 words. Thank you. The third step was taking back my life. Over the next few days, I changed everything. I blocked Laura's number. I changed the locks. I went through every single item in the house and packed up everything that was hers. The process was strangely therapeutic. I didn't even feel anger anymore, just clarity. Then, something unexpected happened. Amanda messaged me again. He confessed. I kicked him out. I stared at the message, reading it over and over. She had done what I had done. No hesitation. No second chances. I felt an odd sense of camaraderie. I'm sorry you had to go through this, I typed. Me too, she replied. But I'm glad I know the truth. A pause. Then. Can I ask you something? Sure. How are you dealing with it? I thought about it for a moment before answering. Honestly? I don't know. I just keep moving forward. One step at a time. Yeah. Same. That was the end of the conversation. But it wouldn't be the last time we spoke. By the time Laura finally called me 5 days later, I was a different person. I let the phone ring. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail. Dan, please. Can we just talk? No, Laura. We can't. I deleted it. Then, I went to bed. And for the first time in weeks, I slept. The morning after Laura's voicemail, I felt different. Not better. Not healed. Just different. Maybe it was the first full night of sleep in weeks. Maybe it was the satisfaction of knowing I had taken control of my life again. Maybe it was the simple fact that, for once, I wasn't waking up next to a liar. Either way, I wasn't going to let Laura pull me back in. But I knew she wasn't done. People like Laura, the ones who think they can cheat and still walk away with their dignity intact, they never just leave quietly. And sure enough, she showed up at the house that afternoon. I had been expecting it. I had even prepared for it. What I hadn't expected, though, was the look on her face when I opened the door. She looked like hell. Dark circles under her eyes, hair messier than usual, the same clothes she had worn the last time I saw her. She looked lost. "Dan," she said softly. I didn't respond. I just stood there, leaning against the doorframe, waiting. She shifted on her feet, glancing past me into the house. "Can I come in?" "No." She swallowed. "Please?" "No, Laura. Say whatever you need to say from right there." She exhaled, rubbing her arms like she was cold, even though it was nearly 80 degrees outside. "Dan, I don't even know where to start." I nodded. "Then don't." She winced. "I deserve that." I didn't respond. She bit her lip, eyes darting to the ground. "I'm sorry." I raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For everything." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "Yeah? Be more specific." She hesitated. That was all the proof I needed. She wasn't sorry for cheating. She was sorry for getting caught. "You don't even know what you're apologizing for," I said, shaking my head. "That's not true," she insisted. "I know I hurt you. I hate that I hurt you." "You hate that you got caught," I corrected. She blinked, then shook her head. "No. I mean, I didn't want things to end like this." "You didn't want things to end at all," I said coldly. "You wanted to keep your safe little marriage while sneaking off to your hotel hookups. You wanted the best of both worlds, Laura. That's why you lied." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen, Dan." Stop." I held up a hand. "Just stop. You don't get to stand here and cry and act like some victim. You did this. You made these choices. Own them." Her lip quivered. For a second, she almost looked like the woman I had married. Almost. "I miss you," she whispered. A sharp, bitter laugh burst out of me. "You miss me?" I repeated. "You miss me? The same husband you tossed aside for some loser at work?" "I never tossed you aside," she argued. "I still loved you." My whole body tensed. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "You don't cheat on people you love." Silence. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then, finally, she whispered, "I know. It wasn't enough. It never would be." "Why did you come here, Laura?" I finally asked. She looked down. "I don't know." "Yes, you do." Her eyes met mine, glassy with unshed tears. "You wanted to see if you could fix this, I guessed." A hesitant nod. "You wanted to see if you could manipulate your way back into my life. Cry a little, tell me you're sorry, promise you'll change." She swallowed hard. "But you and I both know the truth, don't we?" I continued. "What truth?" she whispered. "That you'd do it again." She flinched. "Maybe not next week," I went on. "Maybe not even next year. But eventually, you would. Because that's who you are now, Laura. A liar. A cheater. Someone who takes the easy way out instead of facing their problems." She sucked in a breath, like I had slapped her. "Good. I never wanted to hurt you," she said, voice shaking. "You did, though," I said simply. "You hurt me in ways you don't even understand. And the worst part? You don't actually regret what you did. You regret losing control of the situation." She wiped at her face furiously. I sighed. "Are you staying with him?" She looked up, startled. What? Ethan, I said. Are you staying with him now? Her silence was my answer. Yeah, I said, nodding to myself. That's what I thought. It's not like that, she said quickly. Of course it is. I don't love him, she said desperately. I smirked. That's the funny part. You probably think that makes it better. But it doesn't, Laura. It makes it worse. Because that means you destroyed our marriage for nothing. Tears spilled over her cheeks. I never stopped loving you, she choked out. I tilted my head. You sure have a funny way of showing it. She covered her mouth with her hands, shoulders shaking. I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just nothing. And that's when I knew it was really over. I had nothing left for her. No love. No hate. No emotion at all. Just emptiness. Are you done? I asked after a while. She sniffled. What? Are you done with your little speech? I clarified. Because I've got things to do. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me anymore. Good. Because I didn't recognize myself anymore either. I wish things were different, she whispered. I nodded. Yeah. So do I. Silence. Then, finally. Goodbye, Laura. Her lip trembled. Dan. I shut the door in her face. I didn't check if she stayed outside. I didn't care. I just locked the door, walked to the fridge, and grabbed a beer. It tasted better than anything had in weeks. Laura was out of my life. The pain wasn't gone. Not yet. But for the first time, it felt like it would be. Laura was gone. For the first time in 15 years, my house belonged to me alone. No one else's shoes by the door. No extra toothbrush in the bathroom. No faint traces of her perfume lingering in the hallway. It should have felt freeing. Instead, it just felt quiet. I sat on the couch with my beer, staring at the TV without actually watching it. My mind was somewhere else, stuck between the past and the future, trapped in a moment I couldn't fully process. Laura wasn't coming back. I had made sure of that. So why did part of me still feel like I was waiting for something? The next few days passed in a blur. The lawyer was handling the divorce. I had cut off all contact with Laura. My life was moving forward, even if my mind still felt stuck in the wreckage. It was the routine that was the hardest part. Waking up and realizing I had no one to say good morning to. Eating dinner alone at a table that suddenly felt too big. Lying in bed, listening to the hum of the ceiling fan, knowing the other side of the mattress was empty. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was just lost. One evening, as I sat on the couch, my phone vibrated on the table. A message from Amanda Samuels. How are you holding up? I hesitated before replying. Still breathing. You? She responded almost immediately. Same. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. It had been a few days since I last talked to her, since I had told her about Ethan and Laura's affair. She had kicked Ethan out the same way I had kicked Laura out, and I respected the hell out of her for it. She hadn't wasted time with excuses. She hadn't tried to work through it or understand why he did it. She just cut him off. I wished I could say it was easy for me, too. But it wasn't. Because no matter how much I hated Laura for what she had done, part of me still felt like I had lost something. I keep thinking about it, Amanda messaged again. Like, when did he stop loving me? When did he decide that I wasn't enough? I stared at my screen for a long time before answering. Maybe it was never about us. Then what was it about? I thought about Laura. About the way she had cried on my doorstep, telling me she still loved me, even after everything. I think some people just want more, I typed. Even when they already have enough. Amanda didn't respond right away. But when she did, it was just 2 words. That helps. I wasn't sure why I kept talking to Amanda. Maybe because she was the only person who understood. She wasn't trying to comfort me. She wasn't offering useless platitudes. She was just there. We started texting every night. Sometimes about Ethan and Laura. Sometimes about stupid, meaningless things: work, music, our favorite movies. Sometimes, we didn't even talk about the past at all. It was nice. For the first time since everything had fallen apart, I didn't feel so alone. One night, after a particularly long conversation, Amanda sent something that made me pause. "Do you think we'll ever be normal again?" I stared at the message, trying to find an answer. Finally, I typed, "Maybe not. But maybe we don't have to be." A long pause. Then, "Yeah. Maybe you're right." The divorce moved quickly. Laura didn't fight for the house. Didn't demand alimony. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she just wanted a fresh start. I didn't care. All I cared about was that it was over. 2 months after the confrontation, I was officially single. No wife. No marriage. No more Laura. I expected to feel something. But all I felt was relief. Like I had been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Amanda and I met in person for the first time shortly after that. It wasn't a date. At least, that's what I told myself. Just 2 people who had been screwed over by the same betrayal, meeting up for drinks to vent. But when she walked into the bar, I realized something. She was beautiful. Not in the forced, artificial way Laura had been. Not in a way that demanded attention. Just real. She smiled when she saw me. "Dan. Amanda." We sat down. Ordered drinks. Talked about everything and nothing. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed. A real laugh. Not forced. Not bitter. Just genuine. And in that moment, I realized something else. Laura hadn't broken me. She had freed me. The night ended with us standing outside the bar, the cool breeze making her shiver slightly. She looked up at me, something unreadable in her eyes. "This was nice," she said softly. I nodded. "Yeah. It was." Silence stretched between us. Then, finally, "Would it be crazy if I asked you to dinner sometime?" She laughed. "A little. But?" She bit her lip, considering. Then, with a small, knowing smile. "But maybe crazy isn't so bad. Maybe I wasn't normal again. Maybe I never would be." But as I watched Amanda walk away that night, something inside me shifted. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow.